I gave this presentation about 2 years ago, so I was thinking, boy, Mike must really be impressed with my special needs planning presentation. But what he told me was Karen Kreider is going to be up here talking about 529 ABLE accounts. So, when you go to a concert, you have a star attraction. You're the opening act, so just make sure you get off the stage so she can fill everybody in on what they really want to hear. So, I always like to start with this quote, especially in the world of special needs planning, because a lot of times it is about getting over the hump and just getting started and thinking about what you need to do because your world is so crazy and busy. So part of my job is to help folks, just get started. Once you get started, you can do some amazing things with special needs financial planning and estate planning. So thinking about, these are just some good questions to think about. When you're in that situation, what are your savings and spending habits? Unfortunately, it does come down to having a budget, figuring out what your budget is and how these dollars can be spent in the best ways. Thinking about short-term, medium-term, long-term goals, dreams for the future. I think we get wrapped up when we have a special needs child. You want to do everything you can for them, but you sometimes lose track of your own way and what you need to do for yourself in the way of planning, which ultimately is going to come back to help that child in the long run for you to do that. When you think about your child, what is your vision for their life? If you have that vision, there's some steps you need to follow up and take to make sure that happens. Where is that child going to live? They may live with you, but a lot of times, in most cases, that child is going to outlive the parent. So at some point, people figure that out at different stages, depending on what the situation is and how realistic they are. But at some point, you kind of figure out, we've got a plan for after I'm gone. I know I'm going to take care of my child as long as I'm around and have the ability to do it. But at some point, I may not have that ability, or I'm possibly going to be gone, probably going to be gone from this earth before they are. So we need to take care of that. What social activities, what do you want them to be able to do down the road? And unfortunately, a lot of those things cost money. So you've got to figure out a way to financially have a vehicle in place for them to carry that out without disturbing any benefits that they might have. This is a good one, and I put this up last time too. It's kind of amazing, but it is the reality. When you have parents of special needs children, you can see the percentages have not written the will. A lot of times, it may be just because people think, well, I don't have a lot of assets, but that can be a significant mistake, especially if your child is receiving benefits, because we don't know when we're going to die, and if something unexpected happens and you don't have a will, assets can go to that child. I think a lot of people think, for example, if I'm married and have children, if I unexpectedly die, all my assets are going to go to my spouse. If you don't have a will, half of your assets would go to your spouse. The other half of your probate assets would go to child or children. So it can cause a significant problem not having a will when you have a special needs child. I kind of laugh at this. 53% have not identified a guardian. I was an estate planning attorney before I did this, and that's got to be the biggest argument that people have. We're going to name your sister guardian. No, I'm not going to have your sister guardian if something happens to us. Well, your dad's not going to do it. It's amazing how often you can get hung up on just not knowing who you would want your children to be with, whether they're special needs children or not. That's a big challenge sometimes for people to figure out who is that person that we would want our child or children to be with. Trustee is the same thing. The trustee is the person who's going to handle the money. That could be the same person as the guardian, but sometimes that can be a different person. And with a special needs trust, it's not just about handling money, but making sure everything's done right, so again, you don't potentially interrupt government benefits. Many of them, big number, 88%, have not created a special needs trust, and there are a couple of different kinds of trusts. Most common type of trust that's done with estate planning is a third-party trust, just so assets can be left to a child with benefits and not interrupt those benefits. In cases where assets are already owned by someone that you're trying to get out of that ownership so they can get their benefits back, it's a first party trust, and that has some different requirements. So it depends on your situation as to which type of trust you might need, but you know, I'm always in the position to get the right attorney in place. I don't practice law anymore, so since I'm on the financial planning side, I'm not drafting legal documents, but I have relationships with attorneys to get the right special needs attorney in place to draft the right type of trust. Letter of intent. I think this is a document that parents would have a lot of interest in, and I brought a copy of this to pass around. So when you do a will, you're not going to list all the special things about your child or what that child will need when you're gone. But a letter of intent is a document that can be filled out. When I look at this example, you know, what medications they're on, special people to contact, pharmacies where, you know, you get their medications filled, just all kinds of interesting information. So rather than have an attorney, pay an attorney by the hour to try to draft all this kind of stuff into a will, you can fill this out yourself and put it with their estate planning documents, and it becomes a critical piece of your overall estate plan. So I'm going to pass this around for everybody to take a quick look at, because that's an interesting document. So when we talk about, you know, I really refer to this as financial security planning, and you can kind of break it down into three areas. One of the areas is distribution, and that's really the estate planning component of it. So in any estate planning situation, you're really talking about wills, potentially trust, many reasons to have trust. Minor children, you can have marital trust, just a number of reasons. You can do a certain type of trust if you want to avoid probate upon your death. Previously, you know, 10, 15 years ago, estate tax planning trusts were a lot more common, but the estate tax exemption has gotten significant now, where you can kind of, your first $20 million is protected from estate taxes. So that almost gets me out of a taxable estate. Just kidding. The vast majority of my clients do not have to worry about estate taxes anymore. So that's one complexity you can kind of take out of the situation. But there are a lot of other reasons for trust, including obviously a special needs trust. Powers of attorney are critically important because they deal with situations when you're incapacitated. You need to name someone. It could be a spouse, a family member, a child, an adult child, to make certain decisions, both financial and healthcare. So there's a durable financial power of attorney, and there's a healthcare power of attorney. And you really need to have both of those. Beneficiary designations. Most people have some type of life insurance or retirement plan, whether it be a 401k, IRA. You need to make sure the beneficiary designations align with the other estate planning that you do. So this is, you know, across the board what needs to be done for everyone. And when you have a special needs planning situation, you're adding some things. A special needs trust, the letter of intent that's being passed around. Nick, you're liking that right now, aren't you? Enjoying reading that? I guess a little bit controversial issues when you start talking about supported decision making versus guardianship. Obviously, you don't want to take away the rights of a special needs child to make decisions for themselves if they have the capacity to do so. So, and also it's much less of a process to get the supported decision making in place, which also, if you're going to do that, you're going to want that whoops, I touched it, right? You're going to want that child to have to give a power of attorney. Once they're 18 or older, you're going to want them to give that power of attorney to their parent or whoever that caretaker is. But they can only do that if they have the capacity to understand what they're signing and doing. If they don't have that capacity, in certain cases, a guardianship is required. But that's a much more significant legal process, multiple attorneys involved, hearing at the probate court. So there's no need to, you know, I think the controversy is around, once you get the guardianship, maybe it's just easier to do that once you have it in place, and do you really want to take away all of your child's rights if they have capacity and want to keep those rights? So I'm all about keeping those rights in place where appropriate, but when they're getting to that adult age, which really is 18 years old, that's one of the things that kind of needs to be dealt with, is getting the right documentation in place. And then the 529 ABLE, Karen's going to run that show, so I won't talk much about that now. I talked about distribution. The second component of financial security planning is really risk management. And that's thinking about, although people don't like to think about it, what if something happened to me tomorrow or my spouse? If I have a spouse tomorrow, how does that impact our family? What if somebody unexpectedly passes away? What if someone gets sick or injured and can't work anymore and they're disabled? Or a little later in life, what if you have a long-term care situation, Alzheimer's, dementia, certain strokes, things like that, where you're really incapacitated. If you have a special needs child and you're the person taking care of them, it doesn't eliminate the possibility that one of these things can happen to you. So you've got to kind of look at that situation, and there's protection that can be put in place, and it's not always expensive. You can put some protection in place for a very reasonable amount of money to protect you against an unexpected death, against an unexpected disability, against a long-term care claim that very well could happen one day. The chances of that happening, if you live long enough, are actually a lot greater than you dying or becoming disabled right now. And the other piece is what I would call the accumulation piece. And you think about saving for retirement. What's the best way to save for retirement? A lot of people have 401ks, 403bs. If you own your own business, you may have a SEP IRA, a simple IRA, or if you work for a small business, you may be part of those type of plans. You can have individual retirement accounts, IRAs, Roth IRAs. What's the most tax efficient way to do it? There are tax-free accounts, there are tax-deferred accounts. You can get tax deductions for putting money in certain types of accounts. So there's a lot of strategy around that. Also, Social Security. When you have a special needs child, Social Security comes into play potentially when they reach an adult age. You need to know that for your child, but it also comes into play for the individual, for the parent. So understanding Social Security strategies. When can you take Social Security? There's a lot of strategies around taking it early versus taking it later. Very complicated decision-making process. A lot of people are inclined to take Social Security as early as possible. A lot of times that's age 62. If you do that, you're taking a much smaller Social Security benefit than what you would take if you waited until your full retirement age, which right now is 66, soon it'll be 67, and then you even get an 8% increase every year in your benefit all the way up until age 70. So if you end up working a long time or have other financial resources, it can really pay off to wait a little later to take your Social Security as opposed to taking it early. And again, I won't get deep into it, but multiple strategies around Social Security for a special needs child. SSI benefits, but then when they reach a certain age, they can take a portion of benefits off of one of their parents' Social Security benefits, so they can jump up their benefit at certain times. So again, there's a lot of strategy in making sure you're getting the appropriate benefit from Social Security. And then, really this is kind of to tee you up, Karen. The other thing that's in place now that wasn't previously in place, and in South Carolina, they kind of kicked off in November of 2017, are the 529 ABLE accounts. And certainly that's a great way to save for a special needs child. And there are limits that Karen will talk about. So the one point I want to make is this is not going to eliminate the need to do special needs trust planning, because you can hold a whole lot more assets in a special needs trust. And also in the 529 ABLE account, there's a state Medicaid payback provision that you would not have in a special needs trust. I don't know how much you're going to talk about that, but that's relevant. So when you think about 529 able accounts, that should be in combination with special needs trust planning when you have a special needs child. So no further ado, Karen.